It began with silence. Not the kind that follows applause, but the silence of a hospital room where machines breathe for you. Angelica Hale was just 4 years old when doctors warned her parents to prepare for the worst. She wasn't expected to survive. And yet, just a few years later, she stepped onto the biggest talent stage in America, opened her mouth, and made millions fall silent for an entirely different reason. Viewers saw a small girl with a giant voice. What they didn't see was the story behind that voice. A story of organ failure, a mother's impossible sacrifice, and a recovery that defied medical logic. They didn't know that beneath the glittering lights and soaring vocals was a child who had already stared down death and won. This is not a story about fame. This is a story about survival, sacrifice, and second chances. And as we peel back the curtain behind Angelica Hale's rise to stardom, what emerges isn't just an entertainer. It's a symbol of what it truly means to fight for your life, and then live it louder than anyone thought possible. In the spring of 2012, the Hale family faced every parent's nightmare. What started as a mild fever quickly spiraled into a medical emergency. 4-year-old Angelica, once a bubbly, bright-eyed child, was suddenly clinging to life inside an intensive care unit in Atlanta. The diagnosis? Double pneumonia, caused by a rare strain of pneumococcal bacteria. Within hours, the infection had overwhelmed your system, triggering full-blown sepsis, a silent killer that ravages the body from the inside out. Doctors moved swiftly. Angelica's organs began shutting down one by one. Her lungs, her liver, and eventually both kidneys. As her tiny frame fell into a coma, the medical team resorted to the last line of defense, an ECMO machine, a form of life support reserved for only the most desperate cases. For 12 excruciating days, her blood was filtered by machine, her breaths mechanical, her blood pressure artificially sustained. Her life hung in a delicate balance, and at times, even the experts dared not speak of hope. Her parents, Eva and James, kept vigil at her bedside, watching monitors more than their daughter's face. For over a week, her condition barely changed. Then, just as quietly as the illness had taken hold, her body began to fight back. Her liver function flickered to life, but there was a cost. Her kidneys were gone, and dialysis became a daily routine. Her battle for survival had been won, but the war was just beginning. The road ahead stretched into the unknown. Doctors could stabilize her, but Angelica would never be the same. For the Hale family, normalcy was no longer a goal. Survival had become their daily victory. And beneath it all, one unshakable question lingered. How do you raise a child who has already seen the edge of life? When a child's organs fail, doctors look for donors. But for Angelica Hale, the most powerful treatment wasn't found in a hospital, it was found at home. By age 6, after over a year of grueling dialysis and constant medical supervision, Angelica's life depended on one thing: a kidney transplant. The search began with the usual screenings, but one name stood out immediately: Eva Bolando Hale, her mother. Eva was a perfect match, and without hesitation, she made the decision. 2 surgeries were scheduled. 2 hospitals prepared. On September 13, 2013, just across the street from each other in Atlanta, a mother and her daughter went under the knife at the same time. Eva was wheeled into Emory University Hospital. Angelica lay prepped at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta at Eggleston. The distance between them was just a few hundred feet. The bond, immeasurable. The transplant was a success. No rejection, no complications. What passed between them wasn't just tissue, it was the gift of life, given in the purest form. Eva's kidney gave Angelica more than survival. It gave her freedom. For the first time in years, she no longer needed machines to live. In interviews, Angelica refers to that moment as the day everything changed. She stopped being a patient and started becoming something more. But ask her where her strength comes from, and the answer is always the same: her mother. Because before she was a singer, before she became a star, Angelica Hale was simply a little girl who was saved by love. And that she never forgets. For most children, recovery means returning to the playground, the classroom, a normal life. But for Angelica Hale, recovery meant transformation. Just months after receiving her mother's kidney, she was walking again. Not long after, she was singing. not with the hesitant voice of a sick child, but with the command and clarity of someone who had already lived through the unthinkable. Music didn't just entertain her, it healed her. At 6 years old, Angelica began formal vocal training. Her idols were legends: Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, and Day. Her practice sessions weren't casual. They were daily rituals, driven by something deeper than ambition. According to her coaches, she displayed an unusual mastery of breath control, a skill few expected from a child who had spent weeks on a ventilator. Her voice wasn't just technically sound, it was powerful, emotional, impossible to ignore. Rise Up by Day became her anthem, not by coincidence. It was the song she clung to during the long, motionless nights in the hospital. Years later, that very song would become her audition piece on America's Got Talent. But this wasn't about fame. Not yet. Angelica was singing not to impress, but to reclaim. Her voice was proof that she was more than a survivor. The illness had nearly taken everything. Music gave something back: confidence, purpose, identity. In front of the mirror, she no longer saw a girl defined by tubes and IV bags. With a microphone in her hand, Angelica Hale began writing a different story, one note at a time. In 2017, millions tuned in to watch a 9-year-old girl in a white dress step onto the America's Got Talent stage. Her name was Angelica Hale. Her voice? Unforgettable. From the first note of Rise Up, the crowd rose to their feet. Judges were stunned. Cameras caught Simon Cowell blinking in disbelief. Mel B and Heidi Klum wiped away tears. It wasn't just a good performance, it was a moment. As Angelica advanced through the competition, her following exploded. Her renditions of powerhouse ballads, from Alicia Keys' Girl on Fire to Clean Bandit's Symphony, went viral. She wasn't just a contestant anymore, she was a phenomenon. The golden buzzer came during the Judge Cuts round, delivered by guest judge Chris Hardwick. Angelica fell to her knees under a downpour of glitter, but behind the sparkle, a storm was quietly brewing. When the finale aired, it was ventriloquist Darcy Lynn who took the crown. Angelica placed second. Instantly, outrage erupted online. Reddit threads lit up with accusations of bias. Hashtags like #Angelica was robbed trended across Twitter. Comment sections filled with disbelief. She carried the season, one viewer wrote, and she didn't win? Comparisons between the two girls intensified. Some argued Darcy's lighthearted humor was more marketable. Others speculated that Angelica's emotionally heavy backstory, rooted in illness and survival, made producers nervous. But Angelica herself? Silent. She smiled in post-show interviews, praised her competitors, and thanked the audience. While fans fumed, she kept her focus and her grace. In the world of reality TV, silence is rare. Angelica's refusal to play into controversy didn't just set her apart, it set the tone for what would come next, a career that wouldn't rely on trophies, only truth. 2 years after her breakout moment, Angelica Hale walked back onto the America's Got Talent stage, not as a hopeful, but as a returning icon. It was 2019, and AGT, the champions, brought together some of the most unforgettable performers from the show's global franchise. Angelica, now 11, was different. Taller, stronger, more self-assured. But when she stepped forward to sing Rachel Platten's fight song, the message was unmistakable. The fighter was back. The performance was explosive. Judge Howie Mandel slammed the golden buzzer before the first chorus had even ended, showering the stage in gold for the second time in Angelica's career. It was a rare honor. Only a handful of contestants in AGT history have ever earned it twice. The audience erupted. The internet followed. But the final results told a familiar story. Angelica didn't win. And just like before, the backlash came fast. Viewers around the world, not just in the US, questioned the decision. Critics wondered aloud, what more did she need to prove? Once again, Angelica didn't protest. No angry tweets, no subtle digs. In interviews, she remained gracious, calling it an honor to perform alongside global talent. But quietly, many began to notice a pattern. While other contestants booked late-night talk shows and media tours, Angelica's presence was more subdued. No viral interviews, fewer magazine covers. Some fans asked, Was her message, one of illness, resilience, and quiet strength, too serious for primetime entertainment? If Angelica had thoughts about the results, she kept them to herself. But her actions spoke louder than any verdict. She wasn't back to chase a crown. She was back to remind everyone that her story wasn't over, and she was writing it on her own terms. In the aftermath of 2 dazzling seasons on America's Got Talent, one question lingered in the minds of millions. How could someone like Angelica Hale, twice Golden Buzzard, twice a fan favorite, walk away without the title? The answer may lie not in the competition, but in what came after. While many contestants fade after the spotlight, Angelica took a different path. Her social media presence grew steadily, not in bursts of viral fame, but through loyal, consistent engagement. On platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, she shared music, moments with family, and glimpses of charity work. No scandals, no stage drama, just authenticity. By contrast, her former competitors often rode the wave of post-show promotion. Talk show appearances, late-night comedy bits, scripted media tours. Angelica's rise was quieter, but it ran deeper. She didn't need producers to craft her image. Her story, a second chance at life, a voice forged in adversity, was powerful enough. Industry insiders began to notice. Her YouTube covers regularly pulled in millions of views. Her fan base skewed diverse. Young musicians, chronically ill teens, healthcare workers, even veterans. Angelica wasn't just a singer. She was becoming a symbol. And while she never publicly addressed the AGT outcomes, her trajectory said enough. The girl once deemed a runner-up was now building something more valuable than a trophy shelf. She was building trust. For many, Angelica didn't lose AGT, she transcended it. By 2018, Angelica Hale had already proven she could own a stage. Now she was ready to prove something more, that she could create. No longer content with cover songs alone, she released her debut EP, Christmas Wonder, a collection of holiday classics infused with the same soulful clarity that made her a household name. But this was only the beginning. In 2019, Angelica dropped Feel the Magic, her first original single. Co-written by the young artist herself, the song was a modern pop anthem about resilience, radiating the kind of hope only someone who had faced death could authentically deliver. This wasn't just a new track, it was a statement. Angelica Hale wasn't a viral child singer anymore. She was becoming a musician with a voice and a vision. Her performances began to scale. From NFL stadiums to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, she sang before crowds of tens of thousands, a far cry from the hospital bed she once called home. At the US Open, her rendition of America the Beautiful stunned a national audience. Her fan base, already devoted, began to expand beyond AGT loyalists to include mainstream music fans drawn to her authenticity and range. On YouTube, her covers of hits like Easy on Me, Shallow, and We Don't Talk About Bruno clocked millions of views. But it wasn't just the vocals that kept fans returning. It was the meaning. Angelica's videos became a space for people to share their own stories, often in the comments, forming a community anchored not in celebrity, but in shared survival. She didn't chase trends, she built trust. And in doing so, Angelica Hale redefined what it means to grow from a reality TV star into a true independent artist, not with a record label's machine behind her, but with purpose, persistence, and heart. For many young stars, the spotlight fades as quickly as it arrives, but Angelica Hale refused to follow that script. Instead, she expanded her stage, not just to new genres, but to entirely new arenas. In 2018, she stepped into the world of acting, starring in the musical comedy American Reject, filmed in New Orleans. Soon after, she lent her voice to animated roles in Maya Unstoppable and Disney Junior's T.O.T.'s and Chuggington. Her characters, brave, bold, full of life, mirrored her own journey, connecting her to younger audiences in ways few child performers ever do. But Angelica's most powerful role wasn't in front of a camera. It was in hospital wings, at fundraising events, and on Capitol Hill. Just months after her AGT run, she became the first child ambassador for the National Kidney Foundation. She didn't just lend her name, she showed up. At conferences, she spoke not as a celebrity, but as a survivor. In crowded rooms filled with adults, it was her simple, heartfelt delivery that often brought silence. She went further. As a spokesperson for the Sepsis Alliance, Angelica raised awareness for the very condition that nearly ended her life. She starred in educational videos, appeared in national health campaigns, and even advocated for treatment policy changes before U.S. lawmakers. For organizations like Children's Miracle Network and Make-A-Wish, she became more than a performer. She became a symbol of hope. One viral moment captured this impact perfectly. Angelica, kneeling beside a young girl undergoing cancer treatment, singing Fight Song together. It wasn't staged. It wasn't for press. It was two children who understood each other without words, one holding a microphone, the other holding on. Angelica Hale didn't just survive. She used her second chance to lift others up. And while the world once knew her for singing, it's what she chose to do offstage that now defines her legacy. By 2023, Angelica Hale had already defied expectations across music, television, and advocacy. But her next chapter would take her somewhere even more demanding: Broadway. In a move that surprised even some industry veterans, Angelica was cast as Trisha in Boop, the musical, a bold reimagining of the classic Betty Boop character brought to life on stage. The production premiered at Chicago's prestigious CIBC Theater, with plans already locked to move to the Broadhurst Theater in New York for a 2025 Broadway debut. It was a defining moment, not just for Angelica, but for the arc of her entire career. From YouTube covers to reality TV, she had now entered the realm of professional stage performance, a space known for its unforgiving standards and elite competition. But Angelica didn't just show up, she belonged. This wasn't about novelty anymore. She wasn't there as the little girl from AGT. She was there because she could carry a scene, sustain live vocals 8 nights a week, and deliver layered emotion to sold-out crowds. Critics praised her discipline. Fellow cast members described her as prepared, grounded, and relentless. For a former child star, this was the road less traveled. Many fade. Others reinvent themselves with varying success. Angelica Hale? She evolved. Quietly, intentionally, and without sacrificing her values. In the high-turnover world of entertainment, her transition to Broadway marked something rare. Validation not from applause, but from professional credibility. She was no longer just the girl who wowed on talent shows. She was now a stage actress, fully trained, fully capable, and fully arrived. In the world of show business, talent often fades faster than it shines. But Angelica Hale's story was never about stardom. It was about survival and what you do with it. From the edge of death to center stage, from dialysis tubes to Broadway lights, she has walked a path most adults would struggle to endure. And yet, at every step, she chose something greater than spotlight: service. When she speaks, it isn't from a place of entitlement, but of remembrance. Everything I have today, she says, started from one simple thing: being alive. She never lets audiences forget that her success didn't begin with a microphone. It began in a hospital bed, beside a mother who gave her more than love. She gave her a kidney and a second chance. That gratitude echoes in everything she does. Whether performing for millions or comforting one child in a hospital ward, Angelica shows up with the same message: hope is real and healing is possible. She sings not to be heard, but to help others find their voice. In a culture that often rewards noise over meaning, Angelica Hale is a quiet revolution. She doesn't need a trophy to prove her worth. Her worth was forged in survival, tempered by empathy and lifted by resilience. She's not just a singer, not just a child star, not just a fighter. She's a symbol of what it means to rise, to give back, and to live with purpose.